Welcome into Rounding the Bases.
Round the bases. Everybody knows Joe Goldberg. It's around the bases. Everybody knows Joe Goldberg.
Hey everybody, welcome into another episode of Rounding the Bases presented by Community America Credit Union Invested in You. My name is Joel Goldberg, and I'm really excited about today's episode. It times out perfectly. If you're listening to this the week it comes out, it's Father's Day week. So yes, I've got a good Father's Day gift suggestion for you. And more importantly than that, a great theme involving so much of what we talk about that will revolve around Father's Day as well. I do want to give a shout out to my friends at Chief of Staff Kansas City. I love partnering with them. We'll continue to do so, whether you are in Kansas City or anywhere in the country for that matter, East Coast, West Coast, like my guest is today. Actually, he's often on both coasts. If you are in the hunt for a job or you're looking to hire someone, they're a great resource and good people, and they get it. So even if you're just needing a resource, check them out, chiefofstaffkc.com, making connections that matter. My connection today is a good one, and a lot of, I think, similarities in all walks of life, really. As Father's Day approaches, I'm joined by a guest who helped two sons, not one, two sons, achieve the ultimate football dream. His name is Lee Schwartz, a successful businessman and devoted family man. Now he's also the author of a book called Raising Giants, an inspiring memoir about raising NFL stars Geoffrey and Mitchell Schwartz to achieve greatness on and off the field. It's an insider's football story about so much more than X's and O's. It's the retelling of an extraordinary professional journey, 2 decades in the making, as could only be described by a proud father. I love when I interview the families in baseball, because I think it brings it back to the reality that they are normal people with normal emotions and normal ups and downs, just like the rest of us that just happen to be living in extraordinary circumstances. And Lee Schwartz has been through that not once, but twice. And Lee, as I welcome you into the show, I'm guessing there's some pushback on calling both of your sons stars, because there's no such thing as being a star lineman. But you know what? When you make the NFL, you're a star, because not many people live this life and not many people live the lives of the parents. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
It's good to have you. And in this book, which, by the way, look at the cover on it, and I'm holding it up for anyone that's watching on YouTube. I have my signed copy, but what a well-done cover. It's a picture of, I think, a dad watching through binoculars, and the reflection or the look in the binoculars, one has Mitchell Schwartz, the other has Geoffrey Schwartz, the two former stars, we can call them stars, in the NFL. Lee, what an extraordinary journey. It's been your life, though. I mean, it's normal now, but how many times did you find yourself having to pinch yourself?
I still do, in a way. As we get further away from the boys playing, it seems almost more surreal than it was when they were playing. But it's still, we never anticipated this at all, never had any thoughts that one, much less two, would get to the NFL and have the success they did. So we've pinched ourselves numerous times along the way, Joel. Raising
Giants, my extraordinary journey with two, and the two is in bolder letters, because two NFL sons. I mean, I say this all the time, and I've seen it a little bit in baseball or any sport that I've been a fan of or covered over the years, that every now and then you get siblings in the sports. You see it some in the NBA right now. And I remember growing up, I was a big NHL fan, still am, and there were, I think, 5 Sutter brothers. And it's like, how do you end up with 5 kids in one league? I mean, it's a miracle to have one, let alone 2. But you mentioned, Lee, that this was never expected. As a matter of fact, as you write about in the book too, I mean, your son started playing football late. They were too big to be in a lot of sports. Jeff, I'll call him Jeff. I know you call him Geoffrey, but Jeff, 9 pounds.
I'm about the only one in the world now that does that, Joel.
Right. Well, but I don't want to steal that from you. So that is a father's privilege to call him Geoffrey. Plus, I don't know if that's all you ever call him. That means he's not always in trouble. So that's good. But Jeff was born 9 pounds 7 ounces. Mitchell just a much smaller 8 pounds 12 ounces. So maybe at least in that moment when they were born, I don't know. Maybe there was a comment that said, "My goodness, we just gave birth to some football players," but this was never part of the plan, was it?
No, we never thought about football. I grew up playing basketball and baseball, and I was large for my size. In sixth grade, it's the first time I played organized basketball, and I was the biggest on the court and remained that way through ninth grade. And so basketball was really the dream, if there was any, for the boys. Football didn't arise, as you alluded to, until high school. They were too large to play Pop Warner, youth football. And even if they could have, bar mitzvah lessons had to take precedent. So with the demands of Pop Warner, it wouldn't have worked out. So first time both boys laced them up was freshman year of high school.
Incredible. And by the way, there aren't very many Jews in the NFL either. We'll talk about that. There's a really, really well-titled and fun title of a chapter in the book about that I want to get to as later. Usually the Jewish guys in sports are doing what I'm doing, or up in the front office. Not to say there aren't some great Jewish athletes out there, but again, have not just one, but two sons that navigated bar mitzvah lessons and made it to the NFL. What was, and then I want to get into some of the journey and fatherhood, which is so perfectly timed for this episode, and so much about the book. But when did that aha moment, you write about this some in the book, when did that aha moment click that, wait a minute, this might be more than just high school football or college football, that there might be a future here?
It happened differently with both boys. So Geoffrey, when he started playing football, as I alluded to in the book, was a clod. He had, it just wasn't his sport at the time. And never did we think that it would amount to anything. But I think it was his junior year, the coaches on the team started to say, he may have some opportunities to go to the next level. And so I relied on others to give me an idea of what the future may hold for Geoffrey particularly, because I didn't know what it meant to go from high school to college or even beyond that. Mitchell was a little bit different. And as I say in the book, he's a better athlete than Geoffrey. And so he shined earlier on. And it was quite obvious that if Geoffrey could make it to college, then so would Mitchell. And so I got Mitchell actually involved in a camp at the end of his sophomore year, where he went up against some of the top talent in Southern California, and he shined. And at that point, we kind of knew, well, the next level was definitely a possibility. And then when it came to the professional ranks, moving from college on, again, just similar experiences. We weren't sure where Geoffrey would end up. We kind of knew that Mitchell would get there. As a matter of fact, in Mitchell's freshman year, a former offensive lineman in the NFL, Ed White, was watching him play early on in his first season at Cal, and looked at a buddy of his who became a friend of mine and said, that kid's going to the league. Mm. So that's how we knew. It wasn't my observations, as we relied on people that did know.
Jeff went out and played at a big college, right? I mean, he played at Oregon, but still, not drafted as high, drafted in the seventh round. I mean, did he in any way, if Mitchell was the better athlete, I mean, both had incredibly successful careers and exceeded all the early expectations. But if Geoffrey came in as a seventh rounder and was the lesser athlete, did it help that he sort of kind of paved the way a little bit, or at least showed a little bit of the way of what this looks like? Because I was just wondering if it was the opposite way around, and if the more talented guy goes first, then the younger brother has to live up to those expectations, and if it helped being in the reverse.
Geoffrey, the entire time he played sports and Mitchell was following him, was always supportive of Mitchell. I've never seen him be jealous of Mitchell at all. He did pave the way in high school. He told Mitchell, well, you get to know that security guard because you'll be able then to, get around the campus a little bit easier. But along the way, Mitchell relied on him to help understand what the future may hold for him. So Geoffrey was always very much supportive of Mitchell, knowing the whole time, and Geoffrey admits it freely, that Mitchell is the better athlete.
I was reading, by the way, this is getting back to, large guys and Jews in sports. I was reading somewhere about Geoffrey crediting an excess of matzo ball soup and potato latkes for his growth. I know it's not that simple. Otherwise, all the rest of us Jewish guys growing up would have been the same way. But it sounds like he got a heavy dose.
Yeah, he did credit that. We don't know truly where the mutancy came from. I was large when I was young, like I said, both boys popped out at 95% in height and weight and never looked back. And we've tried to understand where it all came from. And we actually think it's our parents, my wife and I's parents, who were both, for their generation, tall, 6'1" on the grandfather's side and 5'7" on the grandmother's side. So we think it kind of skipped the generation and really came to bear with Geoffrey and Mitchell.
Let's talk a little bit about the book, Raising Giants, My Extraordinary Journey with Two NFL Sons. Encourage everybody to go out there and get it. It is not too late to grab for Father's Day, or if you're listening to this after, a late Father's Day gift, or any gift for that matter, or just pick it up and read it. And I think it's a good book in so many ways. I think, for one, Lee, we all love, and you and I have talked about this offline, we all like to be the fly on the wall if we like sports. And so you get some of this, right? I mean, you're not doing a tell-all book, just like I don't do tell-all books. But I think that we can bring people places that they don't get to go every day. And that doesn't have to be anything crazy. Like, you have the perspective of a father, what it's like to go to NFL games. How is that different than watching your kid play in high school sports? Is it as nerve-wracking or not? And on and on and on, right? So I think we all can relate to that piece of it. But you see things when you're the parents that are going on a trip or showing up. You see what it's like, life behind the scenes, going home all beaten up after a game and struggling to get out of bed the next day and all that. I want to know what it was like to write this book about two people that are so personal, obviously, that you love so much, but also the journey for all of you, and to be able to share the kind of humanity, the realness of it, what that process was like.
It was actually overall very much an enjoyable, I call it a labor of love, to write the book, because so many of the memories are positive, and what they accomplished was extraordinary. There were difficult parts to the book, the chapter on injuries, particularly when it pertained to Geoffrey. He had so many different injuries that cost him years of his career in the NFL. That was agonizing, not only to live through. I was there when he got his first injury playing for the New York Giants, and dislocated a toe that the doctor on staff said he had never seen such a gruesome dislocation, to watching it on TV and seeing him break his ankle twice. Those were agonizing times, but the actual writing of the book and the process of doing so was really quite enjoyable.
It's interesting when you talk about the injuries, the agony. I mean, it's such a unique position as a parent, because I was thinking about this and thinking about you recently, but actually I think when we talked, it was right around this time when you and I last talked. I was in Houston, and I'm talking to Craig Biggio, the Hall of Famer, about his son Kevin, who is with the Royals, has since been sent, as of this recording, to the minor leagues. But there's Craig Biggio on the field in batting, just checking out batting practice, and of course he has carte blanche to do whatever he wants in Houston, as he will forever. He's a legend there. Yeah. And here's his son playing for the Royals, who knows every nook and cranny of that ballpark, as Craig told me, better than he does, because he was the teenage kid running around the stadium while dad was busy working. And I asked the question that I knew the answer to, and that I cringed asking, because a million people I know would have asked him this, but what's it like rooting against the Astros? I mean, he's a Astros lifer, right? He's one of the greatest Astros of all time. And he gave me the answer I expected. He goes, well, I would never root against my kid. I mean, it's family first. And so I just bring that up because if you grew up a sports fan your whole life, which I know that you did, and then suddenly it becomes first and foremost about your sons, it really doesn't matter what the uniform is. That is your new favorite team, and that is your new family. How was that? What was that like for you? Because I don't think most people can relate to it until that they're in that position. I see it all the time when we go on the road, and you got some kid that grew up in Southern California and a family full of Dodger fans or Angels fans that are suddenly wearing Royals jerseys, and it feels weird for them. What was all that experience like, the highs and the lows, and having that different perspective?
I grew up in Northern California. I grew up a huge 49er fan and an Oakland Raider fan. And that's where my allegiances were. And then the boys got into the NFL, And all of a sudden, Geoffrey's on Kansas City, and well, that's the Raiders division. And then Mitchell's in Kansas City, and that's the Raiders division. But it was an easy transition because as you mentioned, it was about the boys. What's more important? Well, it's the boys. The culmination of that was the Super Bowl in 2020, when Mitchell on the Chiefs went to Miami to play the San Francisco 49ers. And I had a cashier here locally at the supermarket who I got to know really well, a huge football fan. And she had an interesting thing to say to me, and it kind of put things in perspective. She said, well, I'm in the best of all worlds. I said, what are you talking about? As she was talking about the upcoming game. She says, well, if the 49ers win, I'm really happy. But you know what? If the Chiefs win, I'm just as happy because Mitchell's playing for the Chiefs. And you put aside the old allegiances because it's all about what they're doing at the time and the jersey they're wearing at the time. So I didn't find it very difficult to make that transition.
Yeah, I bring it up. I don't know that anybody cares about this or not, but I just think it's again, I keep using the word perspective. It's unique because we're wired as sports fans just to be emotional and to love our team. And for many of us, it's a distraction from life and it's enjoyment, just like the theater is for some people, and on and on. And I remember in the 1999 football season, I used to cover the NFL back in the day, and it would have been the NFC Championship in January of 2000. And I covered the St. Louis Rams, the then St. Louis Rams, now LA Rams again. And I covered them all year long. Greatest show on. Actually, no, it was not 99. That was the Dick Vermeil Rams. Then they won the Super Bowl. It was the 2001 Rams. So it would have been January of 2002. And that's when they were called the greatest show on turf. And I was with that team every day. And we get to the NFC Championship, and I walk in to I think it was called the Edward Jones Dome back then. And I walk into the press conference room on the Saturday or Friday, whatever it was, the day before the NFC Championship, into the press conference room. And there, sitting across the stage, is Andy Reid and Donovan McNabb of the Philadelphia Eagles. I grew up outside of Philadelphia. I was a diehard Eagles fan. And I found myself looking at those guys and saying, I really would love to see the Eagles win a Super Bowl in my lifetime. I've never seen it. They hadn't won one yet. They lost one. But I don't know anybody on that team. And I know all 53 of these guys, and I know all the coaching staff, and I know their families, and I know this community that I'm in. And you know what? If the Eagles win this game, I'll root for them in the Super Bowl from my couch. But if the Rams win, I'm going to New Orleans, and I'm covering another Super Bowl, which was the start, by the way, of Tom Brady's great run because he upset the Rams in that one. But it's incredible when it becomes personal, whether it be family in your case or work in my case, where everything changes. Mm-hmm. And isn't it a different way of watching games? Don't you find even to this day that you have a different lens than others might have?
Without a doubt. And actually, you shared the cover story a bit. The cover was illustrated actually by my niece, which I'm really proud of. She's an amazing illustrator. And that was a vision I had for the book because that's how I watched games. That is kind of the person on the cover is a representation of me looking through my binoculars because that's how I watched all games when the boys played, whether in person or at home, which I didn't have the binoculars. I mean, wearing the binoculars almost cost Geoffrey his relationship with his current wife. We went to a Carolina game during his rookie season, and he had just started dating her, and she and I went to the game together, and I basically peered through the binoculars the entire game. And she went home afterwards, and she said to Geoffrey, does your dad not like me? And Geoffrey said, what are you talking about? And Meredith said, he never once talked to me. He kept looking through the binoculars, even when you were on the sidelines. That's how intent I was with watching the boys. And so it is a totally different way than most fans will ever experience in watching a game when you have kids on the field actively participating.
Were you a nervous, need the pace, heart-pounding father, or were you calm?
A combination of the two. When I sat down for a game, I never got up from my seat the rest of the game other than maybe to cheer. I never went to for refreshments. That was for my wife to take care of. I was just glued to the seat. But there were times where nerves got in the way. Yeah, I wanted the kids to do well. And I remember, one game, I forget which guy it was, but they were struggling early in the game against a really tough defensive end. And that was hard to watch because they weren't doing as well as I thought they could have. They ended up doing well. But yeah, that was very agonizing to sit there and watch it. But I didn't get up and pace. That wasn't me.
Yeah, okay. I mean, look, we all come in different shapes, sizes, mindsets, and mentalities, and so I just always smile when I see a big leaguer making his debut, and I go up to interview the parents or the spouse or siblings, and you get every type of personality, but it's emotional, and whatever it is, it's emotional. It's your kid. Let's talk more about the book, and there. The anecdotes in there are endless, and so everybody's going to enjoy that. But there is so much about fatherhood in here, and I don't know if it's always been this way or not. I mean, we're in this time now where sports seem more specialized than ever, and travel ball, and you hear everybody say that they should be more well-rounded and they shouldn't feel all this pressure early on. It's hard as a parent to not get caught up in it because there's a feeling, and I know that you're removed from being the parent now. Now it's on to being the grandparent, which everybody says is even more fun. But even though the times change, there's still always pressure on these kids, and I wonder what your thoughts are on all of that in such a quick. You'll see it with your grandkids as they come up now. Just a fast-moving world where it's like if you don't jump on the train, you might get left behind. Yet that you shouldn't jump on that train, right? I mean, there's that. If you really get it, there's that temptation versus I don't know if this is the best thing for them. Some don't get it, by the way, and they're just all in on it, and that to me is a little bit scary. What's your thoughts on all this?
Interesting you asked that question because I just had a conversation with Geoffrey about this. They were visiting here recently. My grandkids are both athletes, and they're developing at different paces, but not surprising given their dad. My granddaughter is a really good softball player. She's just going to be 9 this summer. She's already on all-star teams. And Geoffrey's been asked to put her on a travel team. And I guess the old expression of the acorn doesn't fall far from the tree, because he said, no, I won't do it. He said, there's too much in life ahead to specialize at this particular point. And we didn't have a lot of opportunity to do that with Geoffrey and Mitchell, but I didn't believe that was really the path. I always figured if they're going to make it in their sport, it'll happen. It'll get them there. But the emphasis on the travel ball now and all the time it takes and the money that you have to expend and the chances of kids moving beyond high school. And I offer this in the book. I mean, even as a football player, Pat Hayden, who used to be the athletic director for USC, was asked on the radio one day, what are the chances of a high school athlete getting into the pros? And he gave 4 different levels of that. I only remember the 2, but he said there were 1.1 million high school football players at that point, snapshot. And then how many would go to college, how many would go to the NFL, and how many would spend 10 years in the NFL, which is a benchmark for success for a variety of reasons. Out of the 11 million, I think I've had 2 people come close to what the actual number that played in the NFL for 10 years, and it's 11.0001%. And you may recall there used to be commercials on TV sponsored by the NCAA where they had athletes saying basically, we will go professional in something other than the sport we're playing. So the chances of moving on are so minor. And yet, if you force the kids or put the kids into an environment where they're so singularly focused, I think there's chances of burning out. They may not be successful. And what does that do for their psyche? So I was always of the opinion, let them try everything they could. Geoffrey played 3 sports in high school, Mitchell 2, even though we got pressure throughout, put him in a football-centric school. Well, what about the academic side of it? Because that is vitally important to us and always was. So that's how we approached it. And we tried to give balance to it all. And I frankly think it paid off.
Before we move on to the baseball theme questions, I want to ask you, for you personally, what it was like to go through this journey, not just once, but twice. And they're not, I think we could probably make the mistake of just assuming that, okay, you got two boys in the NFL, that means it's the same thing, right? I mean, they each had their own different journeys that just happened to turn into this miracle. Miracle might be the wrong word. I mean, I don't want to take away from all the hard work that they've done, but just statistically to what you're saying, look, it's one thing to have all that talent. It's another thing to get noticed. It's a third thing to get the opportunity, right? If you get buried and you're on the third team or the practice squad and nothing ever falls right for you, I always love the Kurt Warner story. If Trent Green doesn't get hurt in 1999, does he ever even get that chance to be a Hall of Famer? You never know, right? So some of it is luck, but it always is hard work to me in the end. How similar or different were those journeys, and what did you learn? What was it like for you to be a part of those journeys?
The journeys were different for a number of reasons that I allude to in the book. It was a journey of enjoyment because I'm a jock. I grew up a jock. I had visions of playing basketball beyond high school because I grew early and was that much ahead of everybody else. But it's also a lot of unknown. I mean, just like being a parent, it's the one thing in life we do that we don't get trained for. And then we don't know what the results are until maybe it's too late. And so we went into these journeys completely unknowing what the next level was. And so my big approach was ask questions, find out, talk to people who do know, and then help the boys accordingly. And that's how I operated. I got feedback from coaches, from people in the sports who gave me direction. And then I utilized that to help them get to where they wanted to go. But at the end of the day, Joel, as much as I did, their hard work, their intelligence, their commitment to what they were doing far exceeded anything else. That's how they got there. Genetically, yeah, they were maybe predisposed to get there, but they had to put in a lot of hard work over the years and a lot of ups and downs to get to the ultimate brass ring.
Yeah. Well, Matt Acorn, as you said, I mean, you don't just stumble upon that hard work. So it was obviously taught to them, and they ran with it, and it turned into two magnificent NFL careers and just the most incredible experiences that I'm sure everybody could only dream about. What did you learn from each of them?
Learn from them. Primarily just how much focus they needed to have. I think I've always been somewhat focused, but to look at their lives and to see how orchestrated it is and how committed they had to be. And training, for instance, they trained for most of the year because they knew that was necessary, and that's today's world. And day to day, they had a particular routine that they had to go through. And there was no one necessarily looking over their shoulders to do it. They had to do it themselves. And I think that just cemented in my mind what it takes to be successful, because what they did for football is easily transferable to the regular world, to the business world, to the life we live.
I was going to ask you that because, your world was the business world, successful in business, wrote a book in the business world as well. This wasn't your first book, but I'm sure this one was even more so the labor of love, but co-authored the book on business from A to Z, the 260 most important answers you need to know. I wanted to get that one in there as well. But what similarities have you seen over the year? I mean, it's what I speak about. I find incredible similarities between what goes in the locker room and building successful teams and the discipline in sports, in any sport, and business. What do you see?
It's totally transferable and consistent. You can't do one without the other. Jeff, I used to say to the kids that if you're on time, you're late. And they used to look at me like I was crazy. I had four eyes, especially when we went to the airport and we had to take a trip. And I said, we're leaving 2 hours beforehand, even though we're 15, 20 minutes away from LAX. And Dad, what do we have to go so early? And they didn't understand it. And now in their professional world, they understood it. And it was the same way for me. People know me now. If I'm even a minute late, it's like, oh my God, where have you been?
Something okay, something wrong?
So exactly. Because I live by that mantra of you got to be on time and you got to be even early. And so there's things like that that are consistent, whether you're playing football or whether you're in the business world and the corporate life.
Last thing before the baseball themed questions, you wrote this book about so many topics, really, about fatherhood, about what it's like to have two sons that played in the NFL and everything in between. The book, by the way, is laid out beautifully into quarters. I love that theme. It makes a lot of sense. My first book, I did innings, and the second one I did pregame, postgame. You have the second one, I think, but there's so many great themes within the book. Who did you write this book for?
I originally wrote it for my grandchildren. I wanted them to be able to be more aware of what their dad and uncle went through. Alex, my oldest grandchild, will be 11, and he was 1 or 2 when Geoffrey played for the Giants. And there's a wonderful picture of Geoffrey tossing Alex up in the air with Geoffrey in his uniform after a practice. But I really wanted them to have an idea of what that life was like, because all they do is hear about it, but through a different lens. And I'm happy to report that Alex has already read over half the book.
That's pretty good.
He's a huge reader. And loves reading. And so every night he goes into bed and he opens up a book. He's actually read all 7 Harry Potter books already. And he's read about half of it. And I said to him, so what do you think? And he had a big smile on his face. He said, yeah, I've learned some things about Daddy. I like that. And Emmy, my granddaughter, has done the same thing. So that's why I originally wrote it. And then it morphed from there. As I wrote it, I realized that there may be some messaging here that can help families maybe going through the same thing who have aspiring high school athletes, and maybe prevent some of the pitfalls that they will encounter by having some knowledge of what's going on. And so it blossomed from there.
All right, let's get to the baseball-themed questions. Let's start with home run. I know you're a baseball guy too. You're a San Francisco Giants fan growing up, but it's not really a baseball question. What's the biggest home run that you have hit professionally in your career? Although I'll include it into involving the boys as well, if you want to go there. Usually I try to keep it to the business world, but the focus is on the book, and so you go wherever you want.
I can answer it in both ways. From a professional perspective, my biggest accomplishment and biggest home run was transitioning from the corporate environment where I was president, CEO of a corporate company, to going into consulting and trying to make a go of consulting. And I say that because my natural characteristic is one of an introvert. And starting something new like that, where I knew that I had a network and be out in the public, that was challenging and always was, hasn't gone by. So I was really happy that I was able to create a successful consulting career, given those considerations. From the boys' side of things, the home run is, the way I like to describe it is, Geoffrey and Mitchell today, with all the success, the notoriety, and everything else that they've received, are the same people they were when they walked out of the house to go to college. And to me, that's what I'm most proud of. They're just mensches, and they're good people, and that's what I'm very proud of.
That, by the way, is as good as it gets. It's what every parent wants to hear. I had a great encounter with I'll just say it this way. I had a great encounter recently, face-to-face encounter with the son of a billionaire. And I know the billionaire. I'm not saying this in a way like I know, just in this world, you meet a lot of people, right? They're not inviting me out on wherever they go, but I, you network and you know a lot of people. And the encounter was so good with his son. I just texted him and I said, hey, I just want to let you know that your son's great. And it doesn't really matter. I didn't say this to him. It doesn't matter how much money you make or whatever it is. We all as parents want to hear that. And so I just said, I'm sure you've heard it before, but just wanted to let you know because, those things are good to hear. So when you see that your sons are mensches, and by the way, if you're Jewish, you absolutely know what that means. But Lee's breaking out one of the great Yiddish words of all time. Mensch just means like a good guy, someone that does the right thing all the time. Think about it as the person that holds the door open for others, right? That's to me, that's the best way to describe it, Mensch. Great. There are a million ways to do it, but that's it. Who's the guy that you want to you want to bring home and introduce to your family. I say that about the players all the time. If I were to bring one player home to a family dinner and say, hey, I want this person to sit at the table and meet everybody. Oh, what a mensch. That's the type of person. Okay. How about a swing and a miss along the way, and what did you learn from it?
Well, professionally, the thing that comes to mind is early on in my professional career, I was asked to be involved in sales. And as I alluded to, I'm an introvert. Sales wasn't very comfortable. And I was then asked to go out on the road with the sales representative of a company that sold product that I virtually knew nothing about. And I was supposed to go to our customers and talk about the product in a way that would make them want to buy it. It was the most miserable experience I ever had in business. I learned that you can't fool people. You have to know what you're doing. You have to be prepared to go out into life. And it was a lesson that followed me the rest of my life.
And those are great business lessons, and they apply to every kind of profession. And you learn from those. How about small ball, the little things that add up to big results for you?
A couple of things come to mind. One I somewhat alluded to a little bit ago is that notion of, I believe you need to be on time for things. Mm-hmm. I believe that you need to be accountable. One of Geoffrey's coaches in high school had some words of wisdom that he shared with the team that is so on point to me. And it may seem like more than small ball, but it comes across that way. In the instance, they were having a team meeting and he looked around the room and he said, don't lie to yourself. Mm. And Geoffrey continues to talk about it. And I continue to be friends with the coach. And we talk about that all the time. Don't lie to yourself. Be honest about what you're able to do, what you can accomplish. Did you make a mistake? Then own up to it. Mm-hmm. And those lessons, I think, are just imperative.
All right, I want to wrap it up with 4 final questions. I throw some random stuff your way, and one would be just this interesting, I don't know what the right word would be, interest in the number 13, if I read that correctly. I mean, we've had Salvador Perez here on the Royals forever. He'll be one of the greatest Royals of all time. But, I didn't tell you this. When I finished my manuscript for my second book, Small Ball, Big Dreams, the publisher said, you got one more chapter and you got 13. It's kind of an unlucky number. And I said, yeah, I got one more in me. I'll throw it out. And then I went back and I looked at my first book, which I self-published, ironically had 13 chapters. It was a coincidence that I ended up on 13 for both. It was not intended. And that actually delayed the book and went with, found a 14th chapter. I've never found any issue with the number 13, although my late grandmother, who I don't think, all my grandparents were Jewish, but she had the triskaidekaphobia, which is fear of the number 13. It was a legitimate thing for her. I've never understood any of that. What was 13 for you?
I guess I've been somewhat of a contrarian my whole life, and I wore number 13 on my jersey whenever I could. I've never been bothered by Friday the 13th. I actually just had a situation with a friend. We had scheduled a lunch for Friday the 13th and this month, and then we had to change it, and he emailed me back and kind of went, phew, I'm glad we didn't meet on the 13th. Well, why? It's never bothered me. It's never bothered me to see a black cat. So 13 has been a number that I always strive to get when I was on a team.
And so back when you were playing early baseball, maybe stickball, you wouldn't have had a number, right? But I love anybody that has old stickball stories because that doesn't exist anymore. But as you were growing up, the dream for you certainly wasn't football. It wasn't for your kids. The dream, if I understand correctly, might have been more NBA. What was the dream of a young Lee Schwartz?
The dream was the NBA, or at least college level. I'm not sure I ever thought NBA, but college level, because I was 6 feet or 6'1" by the time I was 12 or 13. And so I really thought that I had some real opportunities moving forward. Well, that got dashed when my growth plate shut down and I didn't grow much more after that. That's why actually we took Geoffrey to a pediatric orthopedist to measure his growth plates when he was 14, I think it was, because he was already 6'4", 6'5", And we wanted to know, what's the future for him? Is it baseball, basketball, football? So based on the results of that test, we figured out basketball wasn't going to be his sport, and it was more likely football.
All right. Third question as we round the bases, maybe my favorite chapter in the book, because it's just so relatable to me. A lot of this is relatable, being a father, and my kid played through high school, and that's it. We didn't ever expect to go beyond that. I've obviously lived in the sports world my whole life and was destined to talk about it. I was never destined to play at any type of reasonably talented level. The chapter, Do You Celebrate Thanksgiving? Sports and Being Jewish. And I just laughed when I read the title, because it brought me back, and I think I've told you this story, to a player that one off season realized that I was Jewish, as if the last name Goldberg wasn't a dead enough giveaway. You're Jewish? It came up in conversation. Yeah. And he goes, do you have to put up Christmas lights? And I'm like, we don't celebrate Christmas. You don't celebrate Christmas? We're Jewish. He sat and he paused and he said, boy, I wish I was Jewish. I hate putting up Christmas lights. And that's like, for me, that's like the most of what I've dealt with in my career. Curiosity more than anything from maybe athletes or people that just never grew up around someone that had my religion. And it always seemed kind of silly to me, because I grew up surrounded by Jews, and I think you did too. There is in the book a 10 random facts about being a Jewish athlete, prepared by Geoffrey in 2012, it says, and I'll just read a few of them. No, I don't keep kosher. I love bacon, cheeseburgers, and pork chops. My agent is not Jewish, nor is my financial advisor, but my CPA is. That's a little bit about just like, not everybody that is Jewish is in the financial field or any of those tropes that are out there. He says, I carry my personal menorah and have lit Hanukkah candles in the hotel rooms the night before games. Last season, when in St. Louis, my Jewish coach joined me for the lighting. Latkes, for those that don't know, those are potato pancakes. We would never order anything with using the word potato pancakes. It wouldn't be authentic. That's my take, by the way. Number 8, latkes are the most delicious treat ever, especially when homemade. If you've never had one before, head over to your local deli for some. So anyway, then there's one about Christmas tree, Santa Claus. So it's great stuff in there. By the way, before I ask my third question, applesauce, sour cream, both or neither for you with a latke?
Both, but not together.
Interesting. Okay. I think my wife's kind of the same. I never was raised eating it with sour cream. I don't mind sour cream, but I don't like it on a latke. I'm purely applesauce, and I love that.
If one or the other, would probably be applesauce, but I do tend to use both.
Had some great matzo ball soup, by the way, at a Jewish deli in Houston when I was there this year, and it was spectacular. Your sons could have devoured multiple bowls of it, but it was a full meal. This is a fun chapter, but it's a unique one too. You don't have a lot of Jewish athletes, certainly not two of them that are brothers in one sport. Tell me about the Jewish influence on them. There's a great picture of you and Geoffrey at his bar mitzvah at 13 years old. You raised these kids Jewish, and that has stuck with them, right? It
definitely stuck with them. The boys were the first Jewish brothers to play in the NFL in 90 years. They carried their religion on their sleeve. They never hid from it at all. Geoffrey took off struggled with taking off for the high holidays when there was a conflict there. There's a segment in the chapter about a rabbi who actually called Geoffrey out when he was on the New York Giants for playing on Rosh Hashanah. And that was kind of the Sandy Koufax effect for the baseball followers. And because Sandy took off that first game, I think it was 1965, the World Series. The funny story about that is the result with Don Drysdale, who took over for Sandy, who was the second best pitcher. So they weren't really losing much. And Don had a horrible game. And Walter Alston, the manager, walked out to the mound to take him out of the game. And Don looked at Walt and said, I bet you wish I was Jewish, huh? And I love that story. So I'm really proud that they've maintained their Jewishness and their identity in that regard. And the chapter title came from, as you talked about, curiosity. Geoffrey was always curious and having a conversation with one of his teammates, and they were talking about their respective holidays. And one of the last questions asked of Geoffrey was, do you celebrate Thanksgiving? And Geoffrey kind of looked at the player somewhat incredulously and said, hey, bro, that's an American holiday. Yeah, I do celebrate it.
When you told me that story and then I saw it in the book and all I could do was laugh because it's just, if you don't know, you don't know, I guess. And that's just
right. They've had several other stories where they had issues with people because I think of just ignorance and naivete. And they both approached it in a way to inform others and instruct them and handled it, I thought, very, very maturely.
All right, let's wrap it up with the walk-off question, and with it being the Father's Day theme. So I should say to you, Happy Father's Day. And
thank you. You too.
Do it all again with grandkids, and I know that's a whole different level of. You're constantly bouncing around. I think you and your wife and going and visiting and getting to spend all this time that you have right now with those grandkids and your boys and your daughters-in-law and all the family, but. What's the best part now about being a grandfather and being a father still as well?
Having the relationships that I have. I believe I invested a lot for my own purposes as well as theirs. And I think it comes back in spades later on. And the same with grandchildren. We're 3,000 miles away. My biggest concern was, will we have a relationship? And we just have a wonderful relationship with them. We travel, we see them, we FaceTime. We just FaceTime with them yesterday. Family is all important to me. Came from my dad, who worked as a butcher on his feet 8 hours a day. And if I had a game, basketball game, baseball game, he left work at 8 o'clock and he didn't go home and eat. He came directly to the court, to the field, to watch me play after being on his feet for 8 hours. That's what I learned. And so that's what I apply. Family is just the utmost to me, and enjoy the time I get to spend with them. And we have these wonderful relationships.
And what was that privilege like as a father to be able to pull out those binoculars and see two different sons playing in the NFL for as long as they did? Something that you'll never get again. When it's over, but yet you experience something very few have. And I'm wondering if you could sum things up as we wrap up this podcast on what that meant to you to be able to watch them play at the highest level.
As you say, the word privilege is accurate, but it does the heart well to see your kids out there successful, enjoying what they're doing. Obviously toiling in a sport that's really a business and not a sport, but being so successful at it, being happy with it, seeing their success. Look, there was nothing better than being on the field with Mitchell when the Chiefs beat the 49ers in the Super Bowl, and a picture in the book has Mitchell and I with the Lombardi trophy between us. Or the day that, and I think it was 2013, where Kansas City hosted Cleveland, and Mitchell was on Cleveland, Geoffrey was on Kansas City, played the game. At the end of the game, they got together at midfield for a hug and then walked towards us because we were going to take a picture on the field after the game. And my heart melted. I mean, the boys had this huge smile on their face. Their jerseys were dirty and whatnot, but you could just see the enjoyment they had. And as a parent, Joel, those kind of experiences, there's nothing more other than maybe the birth of the kids and the birth of the grandparents.
Yeah. I have to think, this popped into my head, that you're one of the only people that could understand, they certainly, Geoffrey and Mitchell, could understand when the Kelsey brothers would have those hugs after a game, what they were going through. I mean, for all of us watching it, it's just like, wow, how cool is that? How cool is that? Look, one guy's smiling and the other guy after a Super Bowl, I mean, like, there's heartache and joy all in this one picture, and you see their mom and all this stuff. You got that probably on a higher level, didn't you?
I did. And again, the fact that they were so supportive of each other, and that's what you see with the Kelseys, is just the support. And there's not jealousy, animosity, because one may be more successful than the other. They're just the enjoyment of seeing each other recognize the success of the other and being happy for them is something a parent is always looking for.
The book is Raising Giants, My Extraordinary Journey with Two NFL Sons, written by Lee Schwartz. And I'll just say this too. I mean, it's not just for the dads. We timed this out knowing that it'd be great for Father's Day, and it is a phenomenal Father's Day book for the dads, for the sons, for the daughters, for the moms, really for anybody. I mean, because there's so much humanity in here. There's great storytelling. You don't have to be a football fan. You'll love it if you are a football fan. But there are just so many life lessons in here, and so many beautiful family stories, and then the journeys of two kids and their father. So I highly encourage everybody to check out the book. Lee, thank you so much for sharing all of the stories. Well, not all the stories, just a little bit of it. There's much more in the book. So great to be able to do this with you, and I'm looking forward to continuing the conversations offline as well.
You too. Thank you so much. I very much appreciate it and had a lot of fun.
Joe Goldberg, it's around the bases. Everybody knows Joe Goldberg.